I never expected to hear from her again. Not after the way she walked out on me, her heels clicking against the pavement as if punctuating the finality of our marriage. Not after she made it clear that I wasn't enough, that love, loyalty, and years of shared dreams meant nothing if they weren't wrapped in the kind of wealth and status she craved. And yet, here it was, an invitation. It arrived in an elegant white envelope, the kind that smelled faintly of expensive perfume and entitlement. The gold-embossed lettering spelled out my ex-wife's name, Delilah Chambers, alongside another name that made my lips curl into a smirk. Victor Belmont. Belmont, as in the Belmonts, the kind of family that didn't just own skyscrapers but entire city blocks. The kind of people who turned their noses up at men like me, men who built their success with their own two hands instead of inheriting it. I let out a short laugh, tossing the invitation onto my desk like it was a joke. She was marrying into one of the most powerful families in the city. Good for her. That's what she always wanted, wasn't it? To be admired, envied, placed on a pedestal too high for people like me to reach. I reached for my glass of whiskey, swirling the amber liquid as I leaned back in my chair. I had moved on. I had built something for myself. I had no reason to care. Then my phone rang. At first, I almost ignored it, but something about the number made me answer. It was a business associate, one I hadn't heard from in months. "Hey, thought you might be interested in something," he said, his voice smooth but eager. "You hear about that Belmont wedding happening this weekend?" I frowned. "I might have." He chuckled. "Then you should know it's not just a wedding. It's a gathering. Every big name in the city is going to be there. CEOs, investors, people with real power. And you know what else? Deals will be made." I sat up, suddenly more interested. "Go on." "There's a contract on the table, one that could change everything for you. But it's a closed-door kind of opportunity, invite only. And, well, you just so happen to have a golden ticket." I glanced at the invitation again. A wedding? No, this wasn't just a wedding. It was a chance to step into a world where names mattered more than ideas, where one handshake could be worth more than a lifetime of hard work. And more than that, it was a chance to look Delilah in the eye and remind her exactly who she left behind. For a brief second, I considered ignoring it. I had better things to do than entertain the ghosts of my past. But then I thought about what it would mean to walk into that event, to stand in the middle of all those people who once looked down on me and show them, no, prove to them, that I was someone worth noticing. My smirk widened as I picked up the invitation, running my fingers over the fine print. Maybe I wasn't invited out of love, but I was invited nonetheless. And I had every intention of making my presence unforgettable. I stood up, walking over to my closet, my mind already spinning with possibilities. If Delilah wanted to parade her perfect life in front of me, fine. But I wasn't the same man she left behind. I had built something. I had climbed, scratched, and fought my way into a position of power. And now, fate had handed me an opportunity wrapped in gold lettering. I wasn't about to waste it. By the time the weekend arrived, I was more than ready. I chose my suit carefully, sleek, tailored, expensive, but not gaudy. It was the kind of suit that made people take a second look, the kind that spoke of success without the need for words. I ran a hand through my hair, smoothing it down before grabbing my keys. The venue was a grand estate on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place with towering gates and manicured gardens that stretched as far as the eye could see. As I drove up, a valet opened my door, nodding politely. I handed him the keys, adjusting my cuffs as I stepped onto the marble pathway leading to the entrance. Music floated through the air, mingling with the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. Chandeliers dripped from the ceilings inside, casting a golden glow over the extravagance that only money could buy. I took a slow breath, my lips curling into a subtle smile. I belonged here. As I stepped further into the room, eyes turned toward me. Some faces lit up in recognition, others twisted in confusion. And then there were the whispers, the hushed murmurs of disbelief. But none of it mattered, because the moment Delilah laid eyes on me, everything else faded. For a fraction of a second, her perfectly poised expression cracked. Her lips parted slightly, her grip tightening on the champagne flute in her hand. I lifted my glass in a mock toast, watching the way her eyes flickered with something she tried desperately to suppress. She had moved on, yes, but seeing me standing there, unbothered, untouched by the life she abandoned me for, that was a wound money couldn't heal. And just like that, I knew. This wasn't just going to be an evening of networking. This was going to be something much, much more interesting. Because if I had learned anything from my years of struggle, it was this. When people think they've won, they let their guard down. And tonight, Delilah and her entire world were about to learn that I was never the kind of man who stayed down for long. I moved through the crowd with practiced ease, my presence commanding silent attention. The people here weren't just wealthy. They were powerful, the type who could bend laws, shatter businesses, and turn nobodies into kings with a single handshake. And tonight, I was one of them. The champagne in my glass barely mattered. I wasn't here to drink. I was here to make an impression. Across the room, Delilah still hadn't taken her eyes off me. She was trying to mask her shock, but I knew her too well. The slight flare of her nostrils, the subtle tightening of her fingers around the stem of her glass, it was all there. I took my time, making sure she felt every second of my silence, of my presence. And then, I made my move. I stepped forward, weaving through the crowd like a man who belonged. I exchanged nods with men in tailored suits, shook hands with people who only weeks ago would have never looked twice at me. Funny how quickly respect comes when you carry yourself like you already own the room. By the time I reached Delilah, she had pulled herself together. Barely. Darling, she purred, the smile on her lips forced but flawless. What a surprise. I wasn't expecting to see you here. I tilted my head slightly, taking a slow sip of champagne before answering. Didn't you invite me? She let out a soft laugh, but there was an edge to it. I did, but I didn't think you'd actually come. I assumed that I wouldn't dare show my face. I finished for her, watching as she swallowed down whatever lie she had been about to tell. A voice interrupted before she could respond. Darling, aren't you going to introduce me? I turned toward the source of the voice, my smirk widening just slightly. Victor Belmont. He was as polished as they came. The kind of man who had never known struggle, who had been born into power and privilege and had no concept of what it meant to fight for a single thing in life. He was everything Delilah had ever wanted. And yet, there was something in the way he looked at me, a flicker of uncertainty, of calculation. I extended my hand before she could answer. Victor Belmont, I presume. He hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, before shaking my hand. His grip was firm, but it lacked the roughness of a man who had ever done real work. You must be. He trailed off, glancing at Delilah for help. She smiled, a bit too sweetly. My ex-husband. There it was. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with history. Victor's smile tightened just a little before he let out a smooth laugh. Of course. I've heard so much about you. I raised an eyebrow. Have you? Only good things. Delilah cut in quickly, but the way her voice wavered just slightly told me otherwise. I chuckled, swirling the champagne in my glass. That's surprising. I'd imagine most of what Delilah says about me is outdated. I turned my gaze to her then, making sure she saw the meaning behind my words. I wasn't the man she walked away from. Not anymore. A flicker of something crossed her face. Maybe regret. Maybe something else entirely. Victor, oblivious to the tension, let out another laugh. Well, I suppose the past is the past. Tonight is about the future. He lifted his glass. A toast. I lifted mine in return, never breaking eye contact with Delilah. To the future, I said, my voice smooth. And to old friends. We clinked glasses, but I could see the way her fingers trembled slightly as she took a sip. This was only the beginning. The rest of the evening unfolded like a carefully orchestrated play. I moved through the crowd, speaking with men who held influence, making connections that would serve me well in the future. I wasn't here to cause a scene. No, I was here for something far more important. Opportunity. And it came sooner than I expected. As I stood near the grand staircase, a man approached me. He was older, distinguished, with the air of someone who had spent decades building an empire. I recognized him immediately. Charles Whitmore, a name that carried weight in business and politics alike. I have to admit, he said, extending a hand. I didn't expect to see you here. I shook his hand firmly. Neither did I, but I never turned down an interesting invitation. He chuckled. Smart man. And from what I hear, you're making quite the name for yourself in the industry. I kept my expression composed, but inside, I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. Just trying to build something worthwhile, I said smoothly. He nodded approvingly. That's exactly the kind of mindset we like to see. If you have a moment, I'd like to discuss something that might interest you. I glanced briefly toward Delilah and Victor, who were engaged in conversation across the room. I smiled. I have all the time in the world. We stepped aside, away from the noise, and for the next half hour, I listened carefully as Whitmore laid out an opportunity, one that had the potential to elevate my business into something much bigger. By the time we shook hands, I knew one thing for certain. Coming here tonight wasn't just a good decision. It was the best decision I had ever made. And as I turned back to the crowd, catching the way Delilah's gaze lingered on me, I knew she realized it too. This wasn't just about the past. This was about the future, and mine had never looked brighter. The night carried on in a blur of conversation, laughter, and clinking glasses, but beneath the polished surface, an undercurrent of tension simmered. I could feel it. Delilah could feel it. Maybe even Victor sensed it, though he pretended otherwise. I had come here expecting to be nothing more than a spectator to her carefully curated new life. But now, I was an uninvited disruption, a ghost from her past that refused to be buried. And I was enjoying every second of it. After my conversation with Charles Whitmore, I made my way toward the balcony, needing a moment to take it all in. The city stretched out before me in glittering lights, the air crisp against my skin. Success was within reach, and I could taste it. I was so lost in thought that I almost didn't hear the footsteps behind me. Almost. You've certainly made an impression tonight. Delilah's voice was smooth, carefully measured, but I could hear the tightness beneath it. The mask she had so expertly worn all night was starting to slip. I didn't turn around immediately. Instead, I took a slow sip of my drink, letting the silence settle between us. Let her wait. Let her wonder. Finally, I turned to face her. Have I? Her lips curved into something resembling a smile, but her eyes betrayed her. You always knew how to command a room, she admitted, stepping closer. I just didn't think you'd use that skill here. I let out a low chuckle, shaking my head. You invited me, Delilah. Did you think I'd come just to sit in the corner and watch? Her gaze flickered, just for a second, and that was all I needed. You've done well for yourself, she said, shifting the conversation. I've heard things. Good things. I raised an eyebrow. From who? She hesitated, then sighed. People talk. I smirked, leaning against the railing. And what do they say? She exhaled slowly, her eyes drifting toward the city skyline. That you built something from nothing. That you've made connections, smart moves. That you're no longer the man I left. There it was. The confession hidden in plain sight. I watched her carefully, searching for the regret in her eyes. It was there, buried beneath layers of pride and self-assurance. She wouldn't say it outright. She never would. But she felt it. People change, I said simply. Some grow. Others chase the same things, hoping they'll feel different the next time around. Her jaw tensed, but she didn't argue. You think you know me, she said softly, her voice carrying a note of something dangerously close to nostalgia. You always thought you understood me better than anyone else. I tilted my head slightly. Didn't I? She turned to face me fully then, and for the first time all night, she let her guard down. Maybe you did, she admitted. Once. A beat of silence passed between us, heavy with words left unsaid. Then, she did something I didn't expect. She reached for my hand. It was subtle, just the faintest brush of her fingers against mine, but it was enough to send a ripple through the space between us. I didn't pull away. Not immediately. But I didn't lean in, either. Instead, I studied her, watching the way her carefully constructed world was starting to crack around the edges. Does he know? I asked quietly. Does Victor know that some part of you still wonders if you made the right choice? Her breath hitched, just slightly, but she recovered quickly. I love him, she said, the words coming too fast, too rehearsed. I smiled, slow and knowing. That wasn't my question. She pulled her hand back as if burned, her posture straightening as she slipped her mask back into place. It doesn't matter, she said, her voice cooler now. What's done is done. I nodded, taking a step closer, not enough to touch, but enough to make her feel it. You're right, I murmured. What's done is done. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, the door to the balcony creaked open, and Victor's voice cut through the charged air. There you are, darling. I was starting to wonder where you'd run off to. Delilah stepped back as if she had just remembered where she was. Who she was. I turned slowly, meeting Victor's gaze. He smiled, but there was something beneath it now, something sharp and territorial. Interesting. I was just congratulating Delilah, I said smoothly, slipping my hands into my pockets. On her engagement. A very impressive match. Victor chuckled, but his eyes didn't quite match the sound. Yes. Well, when you find the right person, you don't waste time, do you? Delilah said nothing. I let the silence stretch just long enough to be noticed before I smiled. No, I suppose you don't. Victor wrapped an arm around her waist, a silent display of ownership, of victory. But I wasn't playing his game. I had already won. Delilah knew it. And, whether he admitted it or not, so did Victor. Enjoy the rest of your evening, I said smoothly, stepping past them and heading back inside. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because as much as Delilah wanted to convince herself that she had left the past behind, the past had a funny way of staying exactly where it wanted to be. I didn't need to look back to know Delilah's eyes were still on me. Some ghosts refused to be exorcised, and I had just reminded her that the past wasn't buried. It was alive, breathing, and standing in the middle of her carefully curated life. As I re-entered the grand hall, the music swelled, a classic waltz wrapping around the room like a spell meant to distract from the power games being played beneath the surface. Couples glided across the marble floor, but their eyes were watching, their ears listening. Every interaction at an event like this was a transaction, every smile a contract signed in subtle glances. I had come here for a reason, and I wasn't about to waste any more time dwelling on Delilah's regrets. A waiter passed by, and I exchanged my empty glass for another drink before scanning the room. I had already made an impression, but now it was time to secure something tangible, something that would make this night more than just a game of psychological warfare with my ex-wife. And then I saw him, Daniel Kensington, a man whose name carried weight in industries I had only recently begun to step into, a man who had the power to open doors that remained firmly shut to most. He was standing near the bar, engaged in conversation with a group of men who all looked like they had never known what it meant to struggle. His presence exuded control, tailored suit, expensive watch, a posture that suggested he owned not just the room, but the people in it. I approached with deliberate steps, waiting for the right moment to insert myself into the conversation. When the man speaking to him let out a laugh, shaking his head at some joke I hadn't caught, I made my move. "Gentlemen," I said smoothly, nodding toward Kensington. "Daniel Kensington, I presume?" His sharp blue eyes flickered toward me, analyzing me in a split second before offering a polite, if somewhat intrigued, smile. "You presume correctly," he said, shaking my hand with the firm grip of a man who knew his worth. "And you are?" I introduced myself, keeping my tone confident but unassuming. The best way to enter these circles was not with arrogance, but with the quiet assurance of a man who belonged. "I've been meaning to cross paths with you," I admitted, swirling my drink as I spoke. "Your name seems to find its way into conversations whenever real power is discussed." He chuckled, taking a sip of his whiskey. "Flattery will get you far, but I assume you're here for more than just compliments." I nodded. "I am. You've built an empire on strategic investments, on recognizing potential before the rest of the world catches up. I admire that." He studied me for a moment, as if deciding whether or not I was worth his time. "And what is it that you do?" "I build things," I said simply, "from the ground up." His interest piqued. "Go on." I took a measured breath, ensuring that what I said next would hold weight. "My company is on the verge of something big. Expansion, acquisition, the kind of moves that can change an industry. But to take that next step, I need the right partners." He leaned back slightly, intrigued but cautious. "And you think I'm the right partner?" I smiled. "I think you're the kind of man who sees opportunity where others see risk." There was a beat of silence before he let out a slow, knowing chuckle. "I like that answer." "Good." I had his attention. Now, I needed to seal the deal. I didn't get the chance, because just as Kensington was about to speak again, a voice interrupted us. "I hope I'm not intruding," Victor Belmont said, stepping into the circle like a king surveying his kingdom. I resisted the urge to sigh. Of course. Kensington's expression shifted slightly, acknowledging Victor with the kind of respect that only came from shared wealth and influence. "Victor, didn't expect to see you over here." Victor's smile was as polished as ever. I make it a habit to stay aware of important conversations. His gaze flicked to me, and the meaning behind his words wasn't lost on me. I smirked. "Then I suppose you know that Kensington and I were in the middle of something." Victor's expression didn't falter. I'm sure whatever it was can wait. There it was. The challenge. I knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't about business. This was about control. He had seen me talking to Delilah, had witnessed the way she looked at me, and now, he was asserting himself in the only way men like him knew how, by flexing his influence. But I had no intention of backing down. I turned to Kensington, keeping my expression calm. Would you excuse us for a moment? Kensington raised an eyebrow but nodded, stepping aside just enough for Victor and me to have a conversation that wouldn't be overheard. I faced Victor fully, letting the silence stretch between us. You're making a lot of noise tonight, he said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. People are starting to notice. Good, I replied evenly. That was the goal. He chuckled, shaking his head slightly. You really don't know when to quit, do you? I met his gaze without hesitation. No, I don't. And that's what makes me dangerous. His jaw tightened just slightly, a crack in his otherwise perfect facade. You think you can just walk in here and take what you want? I tilted my head. Isn't that what you did? For a second, something dark flashed across his face. A flicker of possessiveness. Jealousy, maybe. Oh, so that was it. This wasn't just about business. This was about Delilah. He had everything he ever wanted. The wealth, the power, the name. But deep down, he still saw me as a threat. Not because of what I had built, but because of what Delilah felt when she saw me. I leaned in just slightly, lowering my voice. She still thinks about me, doesn't she? His entire body tensed, but he forced a smirk. You're delusional. I chuckled. Maybe. But you and I both know that people like Delilah don't change. She left me because she thought I wasn't enough. But now, I gestured around the room. Now she's looking at me like she made a mistake. And you hate that, don't you? Victor's smile was gone now. I had hit a nerve. He straightened, finishing the last of his drink in a single swallow before stepping back. Enjoy the rest of your night, he said, voice clipped. I will, I said smoothly. He turned on his heel and walked away, but I knew I had won this round. And as I glanced across the room to where Delilah was watching, her expression unreadable, I realized something. I had already won the next one too. The evening was far from over. Victor had walked away, but his presence still lingered like a storm waiting to break. I knew men like him. They didn't accept defeat gracefully. They didn't walk away from a challenge without plotting their next move. I had rattled him, shaken the foundation of what he believed to be a perfect life, and now, he'd be waiting for his chance to strike back. Good. Let him try. I turned my attention back to the crowd. The ballroom was still alive with chatter, laughter, and the clinking of crystal glasses. People who mattered were here, and I wasn't done making an impression. Then, the music shifted. The slow hum of a waltz filled the air, and couples began drifting onto the dance floor, hands clasping, bodies swaying in practiced elegance. It was the kind of dance that exuded refinement, tradition, a ritual of power as much as romance. And that's when I saw her. Delilah, standing at the edge of the dance floor, poised like a queen surveying her court. The gown she wore shimmered under the golden chandeliers, a deep emerald green that complemented her skin perfectly. She was breathtaking. She always had been. But tonight, there was something else in her expression, something I recognized all too well. Conflict. She was watching me. Not Victor. Not the guests. Me. And then, as if the universe itself had a sense of humor, Victor reappeared at her side, extending his hand. I watched as she hesitated, just for a second, but it was long enough. Long enough for me to see that doubt had crept into the cracks of her carefully built facade. She finally took his hand, and he led her onto the dance floor, his grip possessive, his posture stiff with something close to desperation. He was trying to prove a point. I almost laughed, but I wasn't going to let him win this round. I set down my drink and stepped onto the dance floor, weaving through the couples with purpose. If this night was a game, then I was about to make my next move. I tapped a gentleman on the shoulder, a man I vaguely recognized as one of the city's elite, offering a polite smile. Mind if I cut in? His partner, a stunning brunette in a deep red gown, barely concealed her intrigue. He, on the other hand, looked momentarily taken aback, but then shrugged. Be my guest. I took the woman's hand smoothly, leading her into the next turn of the waltz. It was effortless, practiced, but my focus wasn't on my partner, it was on Delilah. She noticed. Her eyes locked onto mine, even as Victor spun her around in an attempt to draw her attention back to him. But it was no use. She was watching me, so I let the moment stretch. Let the music carry me across the floor in a perfectly timed display of control. I leaned in slightly to my dance partner, offering a whispered compliment that made her laugh softly. Nothing intimate. Just enough to make Delilah wonder. Victor's jaw clenched. And then, I did something that shattered the fragile truce of the night. I released my partner with a polite nod and took 2 steps forward, toward Delilah. Toward them. Victor's grip tightened around her waist, his eyes flashing with unspoken warning. I smiled. Mind if I cut in? I asked smoothly, my voice calm, confident. Delilah's breath hitched. I saw it. Felt it. Victor's grip on her didn't loosen. We're in the middle of a dance. I didn't break eye contact. And a flicker of tension passed between us, unspoken but understood. Victor was holding on to her not just physically, but symbolically, trying to remind both of us that she was his now. But Delilah? She had other ideas. She turned to Victor, placing a hand gently on his chest. It's just one dance. The muscles in his jaw tightened. And then, slowly, reluctantly, he let go. I stepped forward, taking her hand in mine. The music continued, but the air around us had changed. Every eye in the room was on us. Every conversation had quieted just slightly. I pulled her in, my hand settling lightly against her waist. Brave move, I murmured. She swallowed. You put me in a difficult position. I chuckled. I just gave you a choice. She met my gaze then, something dangerous flickering behind her eyes. And what exactly do you think this proves? I spun her effortlessly, guiding her back into step with the rhythm. That you're still the same Delilah I knew, I said quietly. Still drawn to the fire, even when you know it can burn you. She exhaled sharply, but there was no denying it. There was something electric in the space between us. The ghost of what we once were. The pieces of what we could have been. Victor was watching. I could feel his glare from across the room, but I didn't care. Because in this moment, Delilah was mine again. For the duration of this dance, for the length of this song, the past was no longer the past. She was the woman I had loved, and I was the man she had walked away from. As the final notes of the waltz filled the air, I slowed our movements, pulling her just a fraction closer before releasing her hand. Her breath was uneven, her lips slightly parted. I leaned in, just enough for only her to hear. You can pretend all you want, I murmured, my voice low and deliberate. But we both know this story isn't over. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. Because in the silence that followed, in the way her fingers lingered against mine for just a second too long, I had my answer. The music stopped. I stepped back. And as I walked away, leaving her standing there with her perfect fiancé, in her perfect life, I knew one thing for certain. I had just changed the rules of the game. I didn't look back. Walking away from Delilah after that dance was a calculated move, just like everything else I had done tonight. I had nothing to prove to her, not anymore. The way her breath hitched, the hesitation in her step, the way Victor's hand had hovered possessively over her arm as if trying to reclaim her, those were proof enough. But despite my composed exterior, something inside me burned. Maybe it was the old wounds resurfacing. Maybe it was the undeniable fact that, no matter how much time had passed, Delilah and I still had unfinished business. Whatever it was, I pushed it down. I wasn't here for nostalgia. I was here to win. And I had just taken another piece off the board. As I left the dance floor, I felt the eyes of the guests following me. Whispers trailed behind, speculation bubbling beneath polite conversations. I had disrupted the perfect illusion of Delilah's new life. And in a room full of people who thrived on status, that was something worth talking about. Good. Let them talk. I reached the bar, signaling to the bartender for another drink. I needed a moment to regroup, to redirect my focus back to the real reason I was here. Power, influence, business. Delilah was a distraction. One I couldn't afford to entertain for much longer. Bold move. A voice murmured beside me. I turned slightly, meeting the gaze of a woman I hadn't noticed before. She was striking, tall, poised, with the kind of quiet confidence that only came from knowing exactly who she was. She lifted her glass in a subtle toast. Not many men would challenge Victor Belmont in his own domain. I smirked. I don't see it as a challenge. She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. No. I took a slow sip of my drink before answering. I see it as a reminder. Her lips curved slightly, intrigue flickering in her dark eyes. A reminder of what? That no matter how much wealth or power a man has, I said smoothly, there are some things he still can't buy. She let out a soft chuckle, swirling her wine. Interesting philosophy. But tell me, are you here for business or pleasure? I studied her for a moment, measuring her intentions. She wasn't flirting, not exactly. This was something else. A test. Both, I admitted. She nodded approvingly. Then you might be exactly the kind of man I need to talk to. Before I could respond, a presence interrupted us. Victor. I had felt him coming before he even spoke, the weight of his glare pressing into my back like a blade. Excuse us, he said, his voice perfectly polite but lined with steel. The woman beside me glanced between us, clearly entertained by the tension. Well, this just got interesting, she murmured before stepping away, leaving us alone. Victor didn't waste time. I don't know what game you think you're playing, he said in a low voice, but it ends now. I took a sip of my drink, turning to face him fully. I wasn't aware we were playing a game. His jaw clenched. Stay away from Delilah. There it was. The real reason he had come over. It wasn't about business. It wasn't even about power. It was about her. I smirked. You're worried. His eyes darkened. I have nothing to be worried about. Then why are you here? Silence stretched between us. Victor was used to being the most powerful man in the room. He was used to having everything under control, his name alone opening doors, his reputation keeping threats at bay. But I wasn't one of his lackeys. I wasn't someone he could intimidate. And that infuriated him. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. Let me give you some free advice, Victor. If you truly believed Delilah was yours, you wouldn't need to come over here to tell me to stay away. His hands curled into fists at his sides, but he forced a smile, masking his anger with well-rehearsed civility. You think you're clever, he said, his tone controlled but venomous. I shrugged. I think I know how this ends. Victor exhaled sharply, shaking his head. You don't belong here, he muttered before turning on his heel and walking away. I watched him go, amusement flickering through me. Victor was unraveling. And Delilah? She was already lost. An hour later, I was outside, taking a moment to breathe in the crisp night air. The event was still in full swing inside, but I needed a break from the stifling walls of power plays and forced smiles. Then, I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. Delilah. I shouldn't be out here, she said softly, stopping a few feet away. I smirked, keeping my back to her. And yet, here you are. She let out a shaky breath. Victor is furious. Sounds like a him problem. She hesitated. Why are you doing this? Finally, I turned to face her. Doing what? She swallowed hard. Stirring things up. Putting yourself in his orbit. Dancing with me. I stepped closer, watching as her breath hitched again. Tell me the truth, Delilah, I murmured. If I hadn't come tonight, would you have even noticed I was gone? Her lips parted, but no words came out. I tilted my head. Would you have spent the whole night completely content, perfectly happy, never once thinking about the life you left behind? She clenched her jaw. It's not that simple. I reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. She didn't move away. No, I agreed. It never is. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to steady herself. When she opened them again, they were filled with something raw. I chose this life, she whispered. I nodded. You did. She swallowed. And you have no idea how much I wanted it to be enough. My chest tightened, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I leaned in just slightly, my voice barely above a whisper. And is it? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence said everything. And just like that, I knew. Delilah's perfect world was starting to crack. And I was the fault line running straight through it. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken words, the weight of history pressing against the night air. Delilah stood before me, her eyes flickering with something she refused to name. Something she wasn't ready to admit. But I could feel it. She was unraveling. And for the first time since she had walked out of my life, she wasn't sure she had made the right choice. I took a slow step closer, my voice measured but firm. You never answered my question. She swallowed hard. Which one? I tilted my head slightly, watching her carefully. Is it enough? Her lips parted, but no words came. That was answer enough. I reached for her, my fingers brushing against hers. Not quite a touch, not quite a withdrawal. She didn't pull away. You always had a way of making things complicated, she whispered. I let out a low chuckle. I think you do that all on your own. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head as if trying to shake me out of her mind. I should go. But you won't, I said, my voice low and certain. Her jaw tightened. Victor isn't here. That made her pause. Her eyes darted toward the entrance of the estate, as if she expected him to appear at any moment. But we both knew the truth. Victor wasn't the problem. I was. She was afraid of what this moment meant, afraid of what it confirmed. That despite all her efforts to move forward, despite the wealth, the security, the carefully curated life, she still wasn't free of me. Tell me something, I murmured, stepping closer. When you're with him, do you think about me? Her breath hitched. That's not fair. I gave her a slow, knowing smile. That's not an answer. She looked away, her fingers clenching into fists as if physically trying to hold herself together. You have no idea what it's been like, she whispered, her voice strained. I narrowed my eyes slightly. Then tell me. She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. You wouldn't understand. Try me. She hesitated, and for a second, I thought she would shut me out, walk away, put up the wall she had spent years building. But then, something cracked. I thought it would be different, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought if I had everything I ever wanted, I'd feel complete. I studied her, my chest tightening at the confession she hadn't meant to say out loud. And she laughed again, but there was no humor in it. And I don't. The words hit me harder than I expected. Because as much as I wanted to believe I had come here for business, for power, for something bigger than her, the truth was simpler than that. I had wanted to hear those words. I had wanted to know that I wasn't the only one who had spent nights wondering, questioning, feeling the ghost of what we once had. I took another step, my voice quiet but firm. Then why are you still here? She looked up at me, something desperate flickering behind her eyes. Because leaving once was hard enough. I let the weight of her words settle. She was telling me the truth. She had built this life because she had to believe it was better than what we had. She had convinced herself that walking away had been the right choice, that choosing security over love had been the smart decision. But now she wasn't so sure. I reached up, tracing my fingers lightly along the curve of her jaw. She didn't flinch. She didn't move away. Her breath was uneven. Her pulse was racing. And then, the moment shattered. Delilah. Victor's voice sliced through the air, cold and sharp. She jerked away from me as if burned, spinning to face him. He stood at the entrance of the terrace, his expression unreadable, but I could see the storm brewing beneath it. Delilah opened her mouth as if to say something, but nothing came out. Victor's gaze flicked to me, his jaw tightening. I think it's time we left. For a moment, she didn't move. For a moment, I thought. But then, she nodded, swallowing hard. Okay. I stayed silent as she walked past me, as Victor placed a possessive hand on the small of her back, as if reminding both of us exactly where she belonged. But just before she disappeared inside, she hesitated. Just for a second. And in that second, I saw everything I needed to see. This wasn't over. Not even close. Victor knew it. Delilah knew it. And now? So did I? The night stretched on, but I was done playing polite. I had already won in the ways that mattered. Delilah's perfect world was crumbling, and Victor was grasping at control he didn't have. I stepped back into the grand hall, my mind already working through the next moves I would make. Business opportunities, connections, power plays. There were still things to secure before the night was over. But before I could take another step, someone caught my arm. You certainly know how to make an impression. I turned, my gaze meeting the same striking woman from earlier, the one who had watched the entire night unfold with quiet amusement. I smirked. Is that a compliment? She tilted her head slightly, studying me. An observation. I took a slow sip of my drink, watching her carefully. And what else have you observed? She smiled. That you're the most dangerous man in this room. I let out a quiet chuckle. And why's that? Because unlike the rest of them, she murmured, stepping closer, you don't care about playing by the rules. I held her gaze, intrigued. Tell me something, she said, her voice softer now. What's your endgame here? I exhaled slowly, glancing toward the crowd, toward the spot where Delilah and Victor had disappeared. Then, I turned back to her, my smirk widening just slightly. Winning. She studied me for a moment longer before lifting her glass in a subtle toast. Well then, she said, taking a sip of her wine. Let's see if you do. And just like that, I knew. This night was far from over. Winning. It was a simple word, but one that carried weight. I had said it without hesitation, without doubt. But as I stood there, the night unfolding around me, I realized something. Winning came at a price. And I was just starting to see what that price was. The woman in front of me, the one who had been watching, calculating, measuring my every move, smirked slightly, her dark eyes full of intrigue. You're an interesting man. I raised an eyebrow. Am I? She nodded, sipping her wine. Most men in this room either chase power or inherit it. You? You take it. I chuckled. And which category do you fall into? She tilted her head slightly. The one that watches and waits. Smart. She wasn't here for casual conversation. She was here because she had recognized something in me. Something that separated me from the rest of these men who were content playing by rules they didn't write. I leaned against the bar, studying her carefully. And what is it you're waiting for? She smiled, slow and knowing. The moment when the game shifts. My smirk widened. Then you won't have to wait long. She let out a quiet laugh. Good. I don't like wasting time. Neither did I. But before I could say more, something caught my attention. Or rather, someone. Delilah. She was back inside, standing near the far end of the hall. Victor had his hand on her waist, speaking to a group of investors. But she wasn't listening. She was looking at me. Her posture was perfect, her expression unreadable, but her eyes told a different story. A story of regret, of uncertainty, of a woman who had built her world out of careful choices, only to realize she had chosen wrong. She wasn't supposed to be here, looking at me like that. And yet, she was. The woman beside me followed my gaze, her smirk deepening. Ah, she murmured. So that's what this is about. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She finished her drink, setting the empty glass on the bar before stepping closer. She doesn't know what she wants, she said softly. But you do. I turned to face her. And what do you think that is? She smiled. To remind her that you were never the mistake. Her words struck deeper than I wanted to admit. Because the truth was, she was right. Delilah had spent years convincing herself that walking away from me was the smart choice. That marrying Victor, stepping into his world, was the better life. But now she wasn't sure. And neither was he. Victor was talking to his investors, but his grip on her waist was just a little too firm, his smile just a little too forced. He had seen the way she looked at me, and it was driving him mad. I exhaled slowly, setting down my drink. If you'll excuse me, I said to the woman beside me. She gave me a knowing look. Go remind her. I didn't hesitate. I moved through the crowd with purpose, my steps steady, unhurried. People noticed. They always did. Power wasn't just about wealth or connections. It was about presence. And I had it. By the time I reached Delilah, she had already straightened, schooling her features into something neutral. Victor, on the other hand, wasn't nearly as composed. His jaw tightened the second he saw me. What do you want? I smirked. Just a conversation. He scoffed. We have nothing to talk about. I glanced at Delilah, arching an eyebrow. Is that true? Her breath hitched, barely noticeable, but I noticed. Victor did too. His fingers flexed against her waist before he forced himself to let go, stepping slightly in front of her as if shielding her from something dangerous. Me. I chuckled, shaking my head. You know, for a man who is everything, you seem awfully insecure. His eyes darkened. You're delusional. Am I? I looked at Delilah again, holding her gaze. Tell me, Delilah, are you happy? Victor stiffened beside her. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Silence. The kind that said more than any answer ever could. Victor turned to her sharply. Say something. Her lips parted. But before she could speak, something in the room shifted. An investor approached, clapping Victor on the back. Ah, Belmont. Just the man I wanted to see. The interruption was perfectly timed. Victor clenched his jaw, his entire body rigid with frustration. He had no choice but to turn, forcing a strained smile as he greeted the investor. And in that split second, I leaned in, my voice just for Delilah. You hesitated. She sucked in a breath, her fingers curling against the fabric of her gown. I stepped back, letting my words sink in, watching as emotions warred behind her eyes. Victor was still engaged in conversation, but I knew this wasn't over. Not for him, and definitely not for her. I turned, leaving them standing there. Because the truth was, she could fight it all she wanted. She could pretend. But deep down, we both knew. I had already won. And soon, She would have to admit it. To herself. To Victor. And most importantly, to me. I walked away, but I didn't need to look back to know Delilah was still watching. The hesitation in her voice, the flicker of doubt in her eyes, those weren't things Victor could ignore. And if there was one thing I knew about men like him, it was that they didn't handle doubt well. Especially not when it came from the woman they were supposed to own. I didn't leave the party. Not yet. There was still something unfinished in the air, an electricity that hadn't burned out. I felt it, and so did Delilah. So did Victor. I made my way toward the far end of the estate, stepping outside onto one of the smaller balconies. The cool night air was a relief after the heat of the ballroom, the thick air of money and expectation that had filled the space inside. The view was expansive, the city skyline stretching far into the distance. It was a reminder, one I had fought for. This city had tried to break me, had tried to convince me that men like Victor were the only ones who ever won. But I had made my own way. And now, Victor wasn't just looking at me as a threat. He knew I was one. I leaned against the railing, taking a slow breath, letting the night settle around me. And then, footsteps. Soft, hesitant, but deliberate. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. "Are you following me now?" I murmured, a slow smirk tugging at my lips. Delilah exhaled, the sound of it uneven. No, a beat of silence. I just needed some air. I finally turned, taking her in. Her hair was slightly looser now, a strand falling over her shoulder. Her breathing was shallow, her lips parted like she had something to say but didn't know how to say it. She looked undone, and I had a feeling she hated that. I tilted my head slightly. "Victor let you out of his sight." She tensed, but didn't argue. That was answer enough. I stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "He's angry, isn't he?" She swallowed. "He has a right to be." I raised an eyebrow. "Because you hesitated?" She flinched, just slightly, but I saw it. "Because I let you get under my skin," she whispered. Her honesty caught me off guard. For the first time tonight, she wasn't trying to perform, to act like she had everything under control. She was just Delilah, the woman I had loved, the woman who had walked away, the woman who now stood before me, completely unguarded. I took another step closer, leaving barely any space between us. "So what are you going to do about it?" She let out a shaky breath, her eyes flickering between mine. "I don't know." That wasn't good enough. I reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, my fingers lingering just long enough to make her shiver. "You do," I murmured. "You just don't want to admit it." Her breath hitched, and for a second, just a second, I thought she might close the space between us. But then, "Delilah." Victor's voice cut through the air like a blade. She tensed immediately, her body stiffening as she turned. Victor stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable but his fury unmistakable. I took my time, lowering my hand, stepping back just slightly, but not enough to erase what had just happened. Victor's eyes darkened. He looked between us, the pieces clicking together in real time, his grip tightening around the glass in his hand. "Go inside," he told Delilah, his voice low, controlled. She hesitated, and that was all it took. Victor's jaw clenched, his fingers curling into a fist at his side. Now, I watched Delilah's entire body go rigid, her mask snapping back into place. Without another word, she turned and disappeared inside. Victor waited until she was gone before stepping forward. I didn't move. I didn't have to. He stopped inches away from me, his breath sharp, his hands still clenched at his sides. "I should break your jaw." I smirked. "You could try." His nostrils flared. "You think this is a game?" I tilted my head. "Isn't it?" His teeth clenched so tightly I thought they might crack. "Stay away from her." I chuckled. Now why would I do that? His breathing turned shallow, rage rolling off him in waves. "Because she's mine." I let the word hang in the air, the weight of it suffocating. Then, I leaned in just slightly, my voice low. "Are you sure about that?" Victor exhaled sharply, stepping back like I had just struck him. "You're pathetic," he muttered. "Chasing a woman who left you. You think she'll ruin everything she's built for you? For this?" I shrugged. "She's already hesitating, isn't she?" Victor went still. I saw it then. The crack in his armor, the flicker of doubt that he had been desperately trying to suppress all night. He knew I was right. He just didn't want to believe it. I straightened. Adjusting my cufflinks like this was nothing more than a casual conversation. "You know, Victor, the thing about men like you You think money and power can buy loyalty. I smiled. But love? Love doesn't work that way. His entire body stiffened, his fingers flexing at his sides. For a second, I thought he might actually hit me. I almost wanted him to. But then, he exhaled, forcing himself to take a step back. You're nothing, he muttered, shaking his head. And nobody trying to play in a league he doesn't belong in. I smirked. And yet, here you are, standing in front of me, afraid of what happens next. His jaw ticked. I leaned in one last time, my voice quiet. You should be. Victor didn't respond. He turned on his heel and stormed inside, his anger practically vibrating off him. And as I stood there, alone on the balcony, I realized something. Victor was already losing. Because when a man like him started to fear losing something, he had already lost it. And Delilah? She wasn't his anymore. She just didn't know it yet. I didn't follow Victor inside. I didn't have to. The damage had already been done. Delilah might still be wearing his ring, still standing by his side, but her heart wasn't in it. Not anymore. And Victor knew it. That's why he had come to me. Why he had clenched his fists and spat out threats like a man drowning in his own insecurities. Because men like him only fight when they know they're losing. I exhaled slowly, the cool night air grounding me. The night wasn't over, but in every way that mattered, I had already won. And yet, there was something lingering in the air, something unfinished. I turned back toward the grand hall, stepping inside once more. The atmosphere was still alive with laughter, conversation, and the quiet hum of power shifting beneath the surface. But I wasn't interested in any of it anymore. I was only interested in her. Delilah stood near the far end of the room, her posture perfect, her mask securely in place. To anyone watching, she was the picture of poise, of elegance. But I saw the truth. Her fingers were curled slightly, gripping the edge of her champagne glass like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Her smile was just a little too tight, her eyes scanning the room as if searching for an escape. And when her gaze met mine, she froze. A beat of silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, I started walking toward her. She didn't move, didn't look away, didn't even breathe. By the time I reached her, the tension between us was a living thing, crackling like fire between us. She swallowed. You shouldn't be here. I smirked. And yet, here I am. Her grip on her glass tightened. Victor is furious. I chuckled, tilting my head slightly. Good. Her eyes darted toward the crowd, scanning for him. This isn't a game, you know. I leaned in just slightly, lowering my voice. Isn't it? Her breath hitched, and I saw it. The way her resolve wavered. The way she was standing on the edge of something dangerous and didn't know how to step back. I reached out, gently taking the glass from her hand and setting it aside. Tell me the truth, Delilah. She hesitated. I stepped closer, my voice quieter now. Do you love him? She inhaled sharply, her entire body going rigid. And then, she turned away. She didn't answer. Because she couldn't. I smiled. That's what I thought. She exhaled shakily, gripping the back of a nearby chair for support. This isn't fair, she whispered. I tilted my head. What isn't? She looked at me then, her eyes filled with something raw. You. Being here. Making me question everything. I reached for her, my fingers brushing against her wrist. Then maybe you already know the answer. Her eyes burned into mine, but before she could speak, someone cleared their throat behind us. Victor. Of course. I turned slowly, finding him standing just a few feet away, his expression a mask of cold fury. The room had gone quiet. People were watching, waiting. Victor's eyes flicked to Delilah. It's time to go. She hesitated. That hesitation was all it took. His lips curled in frustration, but he masked it quickly, stepping closer. Now, I could have stopped her. I could have reached for her hand, could have whispered one more thing that would have tipped her completely over the edge. But I didn't. Instead, I smirked, watching as Victor gritted his teeth and gently took her arm, guiding her toward the exit. He thought he was walking away with her, thought he had won. But as she passed me, her fingers brushed against mine. So soft, so fleeting, barely a touch at all. But enough. Enough for me to know that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And as Victor led her away, his grip just a little too tight, his shoulders just a little too tense, I chuckled under my breath. Because men like Victor? They never understood the most important rule of all. You can't keep something that doesn't belong to you. And Delilah? She was already gone. She just hadn't said it out loud yet. But she would. Soon. And when she did, I'd be waiting. Checkmate. I used to think words were just words, fleeting, meaningless when spoken in anger. But sometimes, a single sentence can hit harder than a punch. A single moment can unravel everything you thought was real. Why don't you just disappear? Mia's voice cut through the dinner table silence like a blade. She wasn't screaming, wasn't throwing a tantrum like she used to when she was younger. No, this was different. Her voice was calm, precise, like she'd been waiting for the moment to say it. And then came the killing blow. "We'd be better off without you," Rachel said. At first, I thought I misheard. Maybe I was so shaken by Mia's words that my mind filled in the gaps. But no, Rachel's tone was measured, steady. She didn't say it in a fit of rage. She didn't throw her fork down dramatically. She just said it, like it was fact, like she'd already decided. I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back, to soften the blow, to do something, anything, to show she didn't mean it. But she just picked up her wine glass and took a slow sip, avoiding my eyes. The air in the room changed. You ever notice how silence isn't just the absence of sound? Sometimes, silence is heavy, pressing down on your chest, making it hard to breathe. That's what this silence felt like. I looked at Mia, 16 years old. My daughter, not by blood, but by choice. She was 12 when I married Rachel, already headstrong, already skeptical of me. I spent years, earning her trust. Late-night conversations about books, movie nights where she pretended not to enjoy my stupid dad jokes, helping her with homework when she struggled but was too proud to ask her mom for help. And now, for words had wiped all of that away. I could have fought back, could have demanded an explanation, could have reminded them of all the times I'd been there when Jordan, the man who contributed DNA but nothing else, had disappeared for years at a time. But I didn't. I didn't say a single word. I just stood up, my chair scraping against the wooden floor, and walked upstairs. The weight of their stairs followed me as I moved through the house. I wanted to turn back, to catch a flicker of regret in Rachel's expression, to see if Mia was shocked by what she'd said. But I didn't give them that satisfaction. I walked into our bedroom, grabbed my old duffel bag from the closet, and started packing. Not mindlessly, carefully. I wasn't storming out in a fit of rage, grabbing whatever I could and shoving it into a suitcase. No, I packed with purpose. A few shirts, enough clothes for a few days. My toothbrush, phone charger, passport, just in case. As I packed, I noticed something strange. My hands weren't shaking. I always thought that if my marriage ever came to this, I'd be a wreck, pleading, breaking down, trying to fix things. But I wasn't. I was calm, too calm. Downstairs, I could hear hushed voices. Mia's footsteps as she stormed off to her room. The clinking of dishes as Rachel cleared the table. But no one came upstairs. No one stopped me. The realization hit like a gut punch. They didn't care. They weren't expecting me to fight back. They weren't expecting me to stay. And for the first time in my life, I truly felt like an outsider in my own home. I zipped up my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and made my way downstairs. Rachel was leaning against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. Her expression was unreadable. Not angry, not regretful, just waiting. "So you're just leaving?" she asked. "You said you'd be better off," I replied, checking my pocket for my keys. "I'm respecting that." Her lips parted slightly like she was about to say something, but she stopped herself. Pride? Guilt? Or maybe she was just too damn stubborn to admit she didn't mean it. I walked to the front door, gripping the handle. Before I left, I turned to look at her one last time. "You know," I said quietly, "when Mia said those things before, it hurt. But hearing you agree, that broke something, Rachel." She blinked, just once. No sharp retort, no biting comment. Just silence. I opened the door and stepped out. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but I welcomed it. It felt more real than anything that had happened in the last hour. I got into my car and drove away without looking back. It wasn't until I pulled into Noah's driveway that it really hit me. This wasn't just a fight. This wasn't just a bad night. I might never go back. And the scariest part? I wasn't sure if I wanted to. Waking up in an unfamiliar bed wasn't the worst part. It was the silence. You ever notice how a house sounds different depending on who's in it? Even in sleep, a home is alive. Soft breathing from the next room, the creak of someone shifting under the covers, the faint hum of the fridge, or the whisper of the heater kicking in. But Noah's guest room was silent. Not peaceful, not comforting, just empty. I stared at the ceiling, replaying last night's events over and over again in my head. Why don't you just disappear? We'd be better off without you. The words had settled into my chest like stones, pressing down with every breath. I thought maybe, in the light of day, it would hurt less. Maybe I'd wake up to a text from Rachel saying she didn't mean it. Maybe Mia would apologize. I turned over and grabbed my phone. 27 missed calls. Rachel, Mia, even Olivia, my sister. I exhaled slowly. I should have felt relieved, right? If they were calling, it meant something had changed. Maybe regret had set in. Maybe Rachel had realized what she'd said. Maybe Mia had seen my empty chair at the breakfast table and felt a twinge of guilt. Maybe, but something felt off. Rachel wasn't the kind of person who'd call 15 times unless something was wrong. Olivia wasn't the type to get involved unless she had to. A bad feeling crawled up my spine. I sat up and pulled on my jeans, still creased from yesterday. Noah was already in the kitchen when I stepped out, scrolling on his phone, a cup of coffee in his free hand. "You look like hell," he said without looking up. "Good morning to you too," I muttered, grabbing a mug. He finally glanced at me. "You check your phone yet?" "Yeah." I took a sip of coffee. 27 missed calls. Noah raised an eyebrow. "You call back?" I shook my head. He studied me for a moment, then turned his phone around and slid it across the counter. I stared at the screen. At first, I didn't process what I was looking at. It was a photo. A smiling man, sitting at a table in a restaurant, tagged at a location in Chicago. The caption was simple: "Reunited at last. Family is everything." And there, right next to him, was Mia. Smiling. Happy. The man sitting beside her was Jordan. I blinked. Looked again. My stomach twisted. When was this taken? My voice came out low, steady. "Posted last night," Noah said, taking a sip of his coffee. "Looks like he's been back in town for a while." I stared at Mia's face in the picture. That hopeful smile, the kind she used to get when she thought something amazing was about to happen. When she got accepted to that summer program last year. When I taught her how to drive, and she finally nailed parallel parking. She was looking at Jordan that way, like he was the answer to everything. Like he hadn't abandoned her for years. I scrolled down, my hands tightening around the phone. The comments were filled with heart emojis. Friends saying things like, "So happy for you," and "Finally together." They didn't know. They didn't know that Jordan had missed 6 birthdays. That he'd promised Mia a trip to the beach when she was 10 and never showed up. That the last time he'd come back into her life, he had stayed for 2 weeks before disappearing again. And Rachel, she let this happen. I opened my call log, hovered over Rachel's name. I should call. I should demand an explanation. But I didn't. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in months. I checked Mia's Instagram. Her latest post was a selfie with Jordan. The caption? "Real family time." I inhaled sharply. My grip tightened on the phone. Real family. I wasn't in any of her photos. I scrolled. Scrolled further. Past old posts. Past birthday pictures. Past vacation photos. It took me too long to realize what was wrong. I wasn't in any of them. Not one. Even photos I knew I had been in. The trip to Yellowstone last summer, Christmas morning by the tree, her 16th birthday party. I was gone. Not just untagged. Removed. A hollow feeling settled in my chest. This wasn't just about last night. This wasn't anger. This wasn't rebellion. This was erasure. I set the phone down carefully. My coffee had gone cold. I pushed it aside. Noah must have seen something in my face because his expression shifted. "You okay?" I exhaled, slow, measured. "No." He nodded like he expected that. "You gonna call her?" Rachel's name was still on my screen. I stared at it. Then I looked back at Mia's Instagram. Real family time. I made a decision. I slid the phone back across the counter and stood up. "I'm going home," I said. Noah didn't try to stop me. Because this time, I wasn't going back for them. I was going back to see what was left of me. The drive home was quieter than I expected. No radio, no traffic noise that I paid attention to. Just the sound of my thoughts, circling the same realization over and over again. I had been erased. Not just forgotten, not just ignored. Erased. Mia hadn't just stopped talking to me. She had rewritten history. The vacations, the birthdays, the moments we shared, gone. And Rachel had allowed it. The closer I got to the house, the tighter the knot in my stomach became. I didn't know what I was walking into. Were they waiting for me? Had Mia even noticed I was gone? Did Rachel regret anything? Or was she already imagining a life where I didn't exist? I pulled into the driveway, staring at the house I had called home for years. Nothing looked different from the outside. The lawn was still neatly trimmed. The lights were still on. If a stranger had passed by, they wouldn't have guessed that the man inside had been told he was disposable less than 24 hours ago. I stepped out of the car, pocketed my keys, and made my way up the porch. My fingers hesitated on the door handle. I wasn't coming back to beg. I wasn't coming back to argue. I just needed to see, to confirm what I already knew deep down. When I stepped inside, I was met with silence. Not the comfortable, peaceful kind, but the heavy, unnatural kind. Like the house itself was waiting. And then I saw it. The wall of family photos in the living room. I had noticed the missing pictures before, but now, standing in front of them, it was even worse than I thought. It wasn't just a few missing frames. I had been deliberately cut out. One by one, the moments we had shared, altered. The Yellowstone trip? I had taken that photo, but now, a gap in the composition showed where I had once stood. Christmas morning? Mia had been sitting next to me, unwrapping the book she had begged for all year. But now the image looked wrong, like someone had been cropped out. I took a step back. My breathing was steady, but my hands clenched at my sides. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. The floor above me creaked. A door softly clicked shut. Mia. I stayed still, listening. She had noticed I was here. For a moment, there was silence. Then, after a slight hesitation, her footsteps moved toward the stairs. I turned just in time to see her coming down, phone in hand, avoiding my eyes. She didn't greet me, didn't say anything, just walked past, heading toward the kitchen. "Morning," I said, my voice even. She paused, just for a second. Then, without looking at me, she muttered, "Morning." The tension in the air was thick. 3 years of building trust, of bonding, of being the one who was always there. And this is where we had ended up. "That's a lot of calls you made," I continued, keeping my tone neutral. Finally, she glanced at me. "Mom wanted me to." So it hadn't been her. Of course not. She shifted uncomfortably, fingers gripping her phone like it was a lifeline. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. She frowned. "What?" "The photos. The erasing. How long?" She looked at me now, fully. And there it was, the same defiance I had seen last night. But beneath it, I caught something else. Something smaller, something fragile. Guilt. "A while," she admitted. "Before last night?" She nodded. I let that sink in. So this wasn't just a reaction to our fight. This wasn't just a teenage outburst. She had been preparing for this. "Is this what you wanted?" I asked quietly. "To pretend I was never here?" She exhaled sharply, looking away. "It's not like that." "Then what's it like?" Her jaw tightened. "I don't know, okay? It felt easier." "Easier?" "Yeah," she snapped. "Easier than having to explain. Easier than." She cut herself off, shaking her head like she'd already said too much. I watched her carefully. "Explain what, Mia?" Her phone buzzed. She glanced down. I didn't have to ask who it was. "Jordan." "Of course." "Mia," I said slowly, "how long has he been talking to you?" She hesitated. That was all the confirmation I needed. I took a step closer. "Before last night? Before this week?" Another hesitation. "Months," she finally admitted. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the weight of that settle. Months. While I had been in this house, thinking everything was fine, he had been in her ear, feeding her his version of the truth. "Did Mom know?" She nodded. She didn't want to tell you. She thought it would just make things worse. Worse. Rachel had known. She had known Jordan was back, that he was talking to Mia, filling her head with whatever lies he had convinced himself of, and she had let it happen. Did he tell you to do it? I asked, voice steady. Erase me? Mia's lips parted slightly. That flicker of guilt flashed again. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. I nodded slowly, stepping back. Got it. Mia shifted uncomfortably. It's not. I raised a hand. You don't have to explain. I turned away, heading toward the door. I had heard enough. Because now I knew the truth. This wasn't just about her being mad at me. This wasn't just about teenage rebellion. This was Jordan's influence. And Rachel had let it happen. As I walked out of the house, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. I didn't drive far. I couldn't. I pulled into an empty parking lot outside a closed cafe, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The anger that had been simmering since last night was boiling over, but it wasn't just anger. It was something worse, betrayal. Mia had been talking to Jordan for months. Rachel had known, and neither of them had told me. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, taking slow, measured breaths. I wasn't going to break down. I wasn't going to lose control. I needed to think. My phone buzzed against the passenger seat. I didn't have to look to know who it was. I let it ring. I let the silence stretch. Then I picked it up. 27 missed calls yesterday. Another 8 this morning. Rachel, Mia, Olivia, and now, a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Mr. Carter? The voice was unfamiliar, professional. A woman. This is Mrs. Taylor, Mia's guidance counselor at Westbridge High. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I sat up. No, it's fine. What's going on? A pause. A measured inhale. I wanted to reach out because I've noticed some recent changes in Mia's academic plans that concern me. My grip on the phone tightened. Changes? Yes. As of yesterday, she submitted withdrawal forms for all her advanced placement classes. She's also dropping French club and student council. I asked her why, and she said she's transferring schools next semester. I nearly dropped the phone. She what? Mrs. Taylor continued, her voice calm but laced with concern. She requested her transcripts be sent to 3 schools in Chicago. My stomach twisted. Jordan. Chicago. I ran a hand down my face. And you're just now telling me this? To be honest, I would have contacted you sooner, but her mother signed off on everything. I assumed it was a family decision. A bitter laugh escaped me. Yeah. No. Definitely not a family decision. Another pause. I see. Mr. Carter, I don't mean to overstep, but I've known Mia since freshman year. She's always been driven, ambitious. She had a clear college plan, and now, within a matter of days, she's giving it all up to follow someone to another city. That's not normal. No, it wasn't. It was textbook manipulation. I shut my eyes, inhaling deeply. She said anything else? Just that she's found a new opportunity, and that her father believes she's wasting her potential here. Her father. Not me. Not the man who had raised her. Not the man who had been at every school function, every late-night breakdown, every moment when she needed someone. Jordan had swooped in after years and already convinced her she needed to throw her future away for him. I forced my voice to stay level. Did she mention what kind of opportunity? A beat of hesitation. She said it was something in business. A startup. I clenched my jaw. Let me guess. Her father's startup? Yes. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just disbelief. Just rage bubbling beneath the surface. I knew exactly what was happening. Jordan had done this before. Not just to Mia, not just to Rachel, to others. Years ago, he had convinced Rachel to loan him $20,000 for a sure-thing business venture. She never saw a dime of it. When Mia was 13, Jordan had resurfaced, promising her the world, only to vanish 2 weeks later, right after getting another $5,000 out of Rachel. And now, he was back. I exhaled slowly, gripping my knee. Mrs. Taylor, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you think Mia is making these decisions because she truly believes in them, or do you think she's being manipulated? Another pause. Then, quietly, I think she's being manipulated. I closed my eyes. That was all I needed to hear. Thank you, I said. I appreciate the call. If there's anything I can do, I'll handle it, I said. And I would. I hung up, staring out the windshield. Mia wasn't just pulling away from me. She was being ripped away. I knew Jordan. I knew his tricks. He was laying the groundwork for something bigger. Convincing her to erase me was just step one. The next step? Get her dependent on him. Get her financially tied to him. Make sure she feels like he's the only one who believes in her. I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't. I took another breath, steadying myself. First things first. I needed to see Rachel. I turned the ignition, backed out of the parking lot, and headed home. When I pulled into the driveway, Rachel's car was already there. Good. I stepped out and walked up to the door, knocking sharply. A moment later, the door opened. Rachel stood there, arms crossed, eyes guarded. You're back. I pushed past her, stepping inside. Where's Mia? She's out, Rachel said, shutting the door. What's going on? I turned to face her. You tell me. Because I just got off the phone with Mrs. Taylor, and she says our daughter is dropping out of everything and transferring to Chicago. Rachel's expression faltered, just for a second. Then, her walls went back up. I was going to tell you, she said. When? My voice was sharp now. When she was already gone? Rachel sighed, rubbing her temple. Lucas, how long have you known? I interrupted. How long have you known he's been back? That he's been talking to her? That he's been filling her head with this garbage? Her lips pressed together. A few months. My stomach twisted. Months. I took a slow step closer. And you didn't think I deserved to know? Rachel lifted her chin. I thought I could handle it. You thought you could handle Jordan? I scoffed. The same man who stole from you? The same man who lied to Mia, abandoned her, disappeared for years at a time? You really thought he just wanted to be a father now? Rachel hesitated. I ran a hand down my face. Jesus, Rachel. I was scared, she snapped suddenly. All right? I was scared that if I pushed too hard, she'd cut me out, that she'd choose him. I inhaled sharply. So instead, you let her erase me. Silence. Rachel exhaled, looking away. I didn't know what to do. I nodded slowly. Well, now you don't have a choice. Rachel blinked. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone. I'm stopping this. Now. Rachel's face paled. What are you going to do? I met her eyes. I'm going to make sure he never gets the chance to do this to her, or anyone again. Rachel stood in front of me, arms crossed, lips pressed into a tight line. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers twitched at her sides. But I didn't care. I wasn't here to argue. I was here to end this. You can't just stop Jordan, Rachel said, voice sharp. He's already gotten into Mia's head. If you push too hard, you'll just make her run to him faster. She's already running, I shot back. Or did you miss the part where she's transferring schools? Where she's about to hand him her entire college fund? Rachel flinched. I didn't. Didn't what? I demanded. Didn't think it would go this far? Didn't think he'd do it again? I let out a bitter laugh. You should have known better. We both should have. Her jaw tightened. You think I don't feel guilty? I think you're more worried about keeping Mia's trust than keeping her safe. That one landed. Her face crumpled for half a second before she masked it. I exhaled, running a hand down my face. Look, I don't have time for this. You want to keep pretending like Jordan's not dangerous? Fine. But I'm not standing by and letting him do to Mia what he's done to you. What he's done to God knows how many other people. Rachel stared at me, something flickering behind her eyes. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the folder I had created years ago, the one I had hoped I'd never need again. Then I turned the screen toward her. Rachel's breath hitched. There it was. The evidence. Jordan's history of scams. The fake business ventures, the stolen money, the victims who had tried and failed to get justice. This isn't just about Mia, I said. This is his pattern. He finds people, gains their trust, makes them believe in him, and then he drains them dry and moves on to the next target. Rachel's face paled as she scrolled through the files. Where did you get all this? I've been keeping track since the last time he showed up, I admitted. I had a feeling he'd come back one day. Rachel swallowed. And Mia is his next investment, I finished. Unless we stop him. Rachel stared at the phone, her hands tightening around it. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. You have a plan, she finally said. I do. She hesitated. What is it? I exhaled. We take him down. Legally. Publicly. We expose him. Rachel's expression darkened. How? I glanced at my phone. With a little help. I scrolled through my contacts and called Olivia. She picked up on the second ring. Lucas. I need a favor. A pause. Is this about Mia? Yes. And Jordan. Silence. Then, what do you need? I looked at Rachel. Connections. Someone who can help us take him down for good. Olivia didn't even hesitate. I know someone at the Securities and Exchange Commission. Jordan's running a fraud scheme. If he's soliciting investments under false pretenses, they can investigate. My grip on the phone tightened. That's exactly what he's doing. He's trying to get Mia and her friend's parents to invest in his startup. Olivia cursed under her breath. All right, I'll make some calls. Send me everything you have. Already on it. We hung up, and I turned back to Rachel. Step 1. Get the SEC involved. Step 2. Get the police involved. Step 3? I smiled coldly. Set a trap? Rachel exhaled. You want to bait him? Exactly. She looked uncertain. Lucas, if we do this, Mia's going to hate us. For a while? Probably. I met her eyes. But I'd rather she hate me for stopping him than resent me for letting him ruin her life. Rachel looked away. She won't forgive me. She will, I said. Eventually. Rachel exhaled. And if this doesn't work? I shrugged. Then at least I'll know I did everything I could. Rachel hesitated, then nodded. What's the plan? I pulled up Jordan's latest text from the family group chat. Big announcement at dinner tomorrow night. Can't wait to share the news. I smirked. We're going to crash his party. The next evening, I sat outside the restaurant, watching the guests arrive. Rachel sat beside me, twisting a napkin in her hands. She looked nervous. Good. She should be. Are you sure this will work? She asked. It's already working, I said, nodding toward a black sedan parked nearby. Inside? Federal agents. And inside the restaurant? 3 parents wearing hidden microphones. Jordan was about to sell them on his fake company, and we were about to catch him in the act. Rachel exhaled. Mia's inside. I know. She's going to be furious. I know. She looked at me. You still want to do this? I turned to her. Would you rather let her sign over her college fund to a con artist? Rachel didn't answer. I opened the car door. Let's go. Inside, the restaurant was buzzing with conversation. Jordan sat at the head of a long table, exuding confidence, smiling at Mia like she was his prized possession. I wanted to break his nose. Instead, I walked forward. Jordan's smile faltered when he saw me. Lucas, he said, feigning surprise. Didn't expect to see you here. I smirked. I figured if you were having a family dinner, I should be invited. Mia's face darkened. Dad, what are you doing here? I ignored her, turning to Jordan. So, tell me about this business opportunity. I hear it's a once-in-a-lifetime investment. Jordan's smile didn't waver, but I saw the flicker of hesitation. That's right, he said smoothly. I'm giving my family and close friends the chance of a lifetime. I nodded. And all you need is a few $100,000 from the people you love? His eyes sharpened. Lucas, I don't think this is the time or place. I smirked. Actually, it's the perfect time. I turned toward the doorway. Because there are some people who'd like to join us. On cue, the agents entered. Jordan's face drained of color. The agents walked straight toward him. Jordan Williams? Jordan stood quickly. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, one agent said, holding up a folder. We have evidence of securities fraud, wire fraud, and investment fraud. You're under arrest. Mia gasped. Jordan turned to her. Sweetheart, I don't know what's happening. This is just a misunderstanding. Mia looked at me, wide-eyed. and for the first time in months, I saw doubt in her face. "Dad," she whispered. I met her gaze. "I told you, kid. Real family protects you." And as Jordan was cuffed and dragged away, I saw the moment Mia realized. I had never been the villain in this story. The restaurant was silent. The kind of silence that comes after a disaster, after the dust has settled but no one knows what to say. Jordan was gone. The federal agents had led him out in handcuffs, their voices calm, professional, as they read him his rights. A few guests had gasped, others had frozen in place, not sure whether to pretend they hadn't just witnessed a takedown or to start whispering about it immediately. But the only reaction I cared about was Mia's. She stood there, unmoving, staring at the door Jordan had just been dragged through. Her shoulders were tense, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I could see it happening in real time, the shattering of the illusion. I took a careful step toward her. "Mia, don't," she snapped. Her voice was sharp, but it wavered, just enough to tell me she was trying to hold herself together. She turned slowly, her eyes blazing, but beneath the anger, I saw something else. Betrayal. "You set him up," she said. I held her gaze. "I protected you." "Protected me?" Her voice rose slightly, sharp enough that a few lingering guests looked over before awkwardly turning away. "You ambushed him. You got him arrested." I exhaled. "Mia, listen to me. Jordan wasn't who you thought he was. He was." "I know who he is," she shouted, her face red now. "He's my father." I flinched. I didn't mean to, but it hit harder than I expected. Not because she still saw him that way, but because she said it like I wasn't. Rachel placed a hand on Mia's arm, her voice soothing. "Sweetheart, he was scamming you. He was scamming all of us." Mia yanked her arm away. "You both lied to me. You humiliated him in front of everyone. Do you have any idea how that felt?" Rachel's face fell. "Mia, I hate you." The words cut through the room like a whip. Rachel froze. I swallowed hard. Mia's chest was rising and falling fast, her breaths uneven, tears brimming in her eyes. But she wasn't done. "I trusted you," she said, voice breaking. "I thought," she shook her head violently, "you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to ruin everything." Rachel tried again. "Mia, we were trying to keep you safe." Mia let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Right. Safe." She turned her glare on me. "You never wanted me to have a relationship with him. You just waited for an excuse to get rid of him." My jaw clenched. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" she challenged. "You were jealous. You couldn't stand that he came back, that I wanted to be with him." I exhaled slowly, pushing down the frustration, the exhaustion, the sheer helplessness of trying to reach her through the anger. "You know what hurts the most?" she continued, voice trembling. "I thought you were different. I thought you actually—" She cut herself off, pressing her lips together, shaking her head. I stepped closer. "Mia, I love you." Her breath hitched, just barely. "No, you don't. You just want to control me." That one hurt. That one hurt like hell. Because I had spent 16 years proving to her that I wasn't Jordan. That I wouldn't leave, that I wouldn't hurt her, that I wouldn't lie. And now, in her eyes, I was the villain. I nodded slowly. "Okay," I said, voice steady. "If that's what you believe, then I won't try to convince you otherwise." Mia blinked, caught off guard. "But let me ask you one thing," I continued. "If he was innocent, why did he run?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. I stepped closer. "If he was telling the truth, if he really loved you, why did he ask you to cut me out of your life? Why did he ask you to lie to your mom? Why did he need your money?" She shook her head. "He was trying to help me. By stealing your college fund?" I asked gently. Mia's breathing was shaky now. I could see it, the cracks forming, the battle inside her as her heart and her brain fought to make sense of what had just happened. He said it was an investment," she whispered. I softened my voice. "It wasn't. It was a scam. And you weren't the only one he was trying to fool." Tears spilled over, and she angrily wiped them away. I knew better than to push her, so I let her stand there, arms wrapped around herself, the truth sinking in, breaking apart everything she had convinced herself to believe. Rachel reached for her again, but Mia stepped back. I need to go. Rachel looked at me, silently asking what to do. I shook my head. Let her. Mia turned and walked out of the restaurant, shoulders stiff, head down. Rachel hesitated, then exhaled. She hates us. I shook my head. She doesn't. Rachel looked at me. She just said it to our faces. I met her eyes. She's hurting. She's confused. She's mad. I exhaled. But she doesn't hate us. Rachel's expression wavered. How do you know? Because deep down, she knows the truth. Rachel swallowed. And now? I stared at the door Mia had just walked through, feeling the weight of everything that had happened, of everything that was still ahead. Now, I said quietly, we wait. Waiting. That was the hardest part. I had spent months watching Mia slip away, and now, after everything, after exposing Jordan, after watching her break right in front of me, I had no choice but to wait. It had been 3 days since the restaurant. 3 days since she had stormed out, since she had looked at me like I was the one who had betrayed her, since she had walked away without turning back. And in those 3 days, nothing. No calls. No texts. Silence. Rachel was struggling with it in her own way. She had spent the first day pacing, picking up her phone every 5 minutes like she expected Mia to magically change her mind and come home. By the second day, she had gone quiet, the exhaustion settling in her bones. By the third, she looked like she had aged 5 years. I didn't tell her, but I had barely slept. I told myself it was because I was waiting for Mia to reach out, but the truth was, I was terrified she wouldn't. What if we had pushed too hard? What if we had done the right thing but lost her in the process? What if, after everything, Jordan still won? The thought alone made me sick. So when my phone finally buzzed on the morning of the 4th day, I nearly knocked my coffee over trying to grab it. Mia. A text. Just one sentence. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long moment, my heart hammering. Then I typed back, of course. Where? A few seconds passed. Then, ice cream place? I exhaled. 3 years. That's how long we had been going to that little ice cream shop. It had started as a tradition after her dance classes, a way to bribe her into talking to me when she was younger. Over time, it became our thing. And now? She was reaching out. I grabbed my keys. The shop was nearly empty when I got there. It was late afternoon, too early for the usual evening crowd, but I had a feeling Mia had picked it for that reason. She was already there, sitting in the corner booth, hands wrapped around a small cup of mint chocolate chip, the same flavor she had always gotten. But she looked different. Not angry, not defiant, just tired. I walked over slowly, sliding into the seat across from her. She didn't look up at first, just kept her gaze on her ice cream, poking at it with her spoon. Finally, she exhaled. I don't know how to start. Then don't, I said gently. Just say whatever's on your mind. She hesitated. Then, quietly, I feel stupid. That took me off guard. Why? Her fingers tightened around the cup. Because I should have known. I should have seen it. But she swallowed. I wanted it to be real so bad that I ignored everything. I let her sit in that silence for a moment. Then I said, that doesn't make you stupid, Mia. That makes you human. Her eyes flicked up to mine, searching. You're not mad? I was never mad at you, I said softly. Frustrated? Sure. Scared? Definitely. But never mad. Her lips parted slightly, like she hadn't expected that. I leaned forward. Mia, you were lied to. Manipulated. That's not on you. That's on him. Her jaw clenched and I saw it again. That flicker of anger, but this time, it wasn't directed at me. Why did he do it? She asked. I sighed. Because that's who he is. He takes. He convinces people to give up everything for him, and then he disappears. It's what he's always done. She exhaled, rubbing her temple. I feel so stupid for believing him. You believed him because you wanted to, I said. And that's okay. We all want to believe that people can change. But the important thing isn't that you believed him. It's that now, you see the truth. She let that sit for a while. Then, barely above a whisper. She asked, "Why didn't you fight me harder?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "When I was pulling away. When I erased you from the photos. When I said," she swallowed hard. "When I said all those things. Why didn't you stop me?" I studied her carefully. Would it have worked? She blinked. I shook my head. "You weren't ready to hear the truth yet. If I had pushed harder, you would have just run faster." Her throat bobbed. "But I never gave up on you, Mia," I added. "Not for a second." She inhaled sharply, her grip on the spoon tightening. "I said I hated you." I nodded. "You did." She looked away, guilt flickering across her face. "I didn't mean it." "I know." Finally, her shoulders sagged, the weight she had been carrying for weeks crashing down. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. "I know." She sniffed, wiping her nose. "You're supposed to say, 'It's okay.'" I smiled gently. "No, it's not okay. But it will be." She let out a breathy laugh, shaking her head. "God, you're such a dad." I chuckled. "You're just realizing that now?" She rolled her eyes but didn't pull her hand away. "Mom's been freaking out," she admitted. I figured. She thought I wasn't coming home. I met her gaze. "Are you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." I exhaled, relief washing over me. But Mia wasn't done. "One condition," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh." She took a deep breath. "I want to help." I frowned. "Help with what?" She looked me straight in the eye. "I want to make sure he never does this to anyone else." I blinked. "Mia." "No," she said firmly. "He used me. He used my friends. He almost stole my future. And I let him." Her hands clenched into fists. "I don't want to just move on like it never happened. I want to do something about it." I studied her carefully, pride swelling in my chest. She wasn't just healing. She was fighting back. And I wasn't going to stop her. I nodded. "Okay." She exhaled in relief. "Okay." I glanced at her melted ice cream. "You gonna eat that?" She snorted. "It's basically soup now." I grinned. "Another round?" She hesitated, then smiled. "Yeah, let's do it." We stood up, walking toward the counter. And for the first time in months, Mia walked beside me. Not as someone trying to escape, but as someone ready to rebuild. Healing isn't a straight line. It's messy, unpredictable. Some days, it feels like progress. Other days, it feels like you're right back where you started. But today felt like progress. Mia had come home. Rachel and I had been sitting in the living room when we heard the front door unlock. The sound was so normal, so routine, that for a second, neither of us reacted. But then I saw Rachel freeze, her hands tightening around the throw pillow on her lap. I turned just in time to see Mia step inside. She wasn't carrying a suitcase, wasn't making a dramatic entrance. She just walked in, like she had done 1,000 times before. Rachel shot up from the couch. "Mia?" Mia hesitated in the doorway. "Yeah, it's me." For a long, painful moment, Rachel didn't move. Like she wasn't sure if this was real, or if one wrong word would make Mia walk right back out. Then, she took a careful step forward. "Are you?" "Yeah," Mia cut in. "I'm staying." Rachel's breath hitched. I saw her throat bob as she swallowed the emotions threatening to spill over. "Oh, sweetheart." Before she could finish, Mia crossed the room and hugged her. Rachel collapsed into the hug, wrapping her arms around Mia like she was afraid to let go. I sat back, watching them, letting them have this moment. Then Mia turned to me. She didn't rush toward me the way she had with Rachel, but she didn't hesitate, either. She just looked at me for a long second, then nodded. "I meant what I said at the ice cream shop," she murmured. I nodded back. "I know." And just like that, the weight I had been carrying for weeks finally started to lift. She was home. The next few days felt lighter. Mia wasn't avoiding us anymore. She didn't immediately go to her room and shut the door. She was still quiet, still processing everything, but she was here. She asked Rachel for help with her history project. She sat next to me on the couch and stole my popcorn during a movie. She stayed at the dinner table instead of rushing off after eating. Small things. Huge things. Then, one night, she knocked on my office door. I looked up from my laptop. "Hey, kid." She stepped inside, holding a manila envelope. "I found this in my room," she said, placing it on my desk. "Jordan asked me to mail it last week." I frowned, picking it up. "What is it?" "Investment paperwork. For his startup." I flipped through the documents, my stomach twisting. Sure enough, it was exactly what I thought it was. A contract for an initial investment of $50,000. "Mia," I said slowly, "were you actually going to sign this?" She shifted uncomfortably. I thought about it. I wanted to prove I believed in him. I exhaled sharply. "And now?" She met my gaze. "I want to add it to the evidence file." I studied her. "You sure?" "Yeah." She squared her shoulders. "I want to be the one to hand it over." A slow smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "All right." I reached for my phone. "Tomorrow morning, we deliver it together." The next morning, we walked into the district attorney's office. Mia had been quiet in the car, but now, as we stood in the hallway, I could see her nerves creeping in. She was gripping the envelope tightly, her fingers twitching slightly. I nudged her. "You okay?" She nodded quickly. "Yeah, just it's weird." "What is?" She exhaled. "I spent so long thinking he was the one person who really saw me, who believed in me. And now, I'm helping put him away." I nodded. "That's not easy." She let out a soft laugh. "No, it's really not." I glanced at her hands. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready." She tightened her grip on the envelope. "I am." Before I could say anything else, the door opened, and a woman in a navy blue suit stepped out. "Mr. Carter?" "Mia." Mia straightened. "That's us." The woman smiled. "I'm Assistant District Attorney Wells. Come on in." The meeting didn't take long. Mia handed over the documents. She answered their questions. She told them everything she had heard Jordan say, every promise he had made, every lie he had fed her. She didn't hesitate. And when we left the office, stepping out into the cool morning air, she let out a deep breath and smiled. I raised an eyebrow. That a relief smile or a nervous smile? "A little of both," she admitted. I grinned. "Proud of you, kid." She smirked. "You gonna start saying kiddo next?" "Absolutely not," I said. "You'd disown me." She laughed, really laughed. And God, I had missed that sound. Then she nudged me. "Ice cream?" I blinked. "At 10 in the morning?" She grinned. "Breakfast of champions." I shook my head, chuckling. "Let's do it." And as we walked down the sidewalk, heading toward our favorite shop, I realized something. This wasn't just healing. This was rebuilding. Mia had made a choice. She had chosen the truth. She had chosen to fight back. And most importantly, she had chosen me.